and welcome to the American Scouser podcast. Another Monday, we are here, same time, same place, same trio, talking after a nice 3 points from the weekend. I am your host, as always, Timuchin here in Chicago, and it wouldn't be right, especially today, if I didn't bitch about the weather. Hot as fuck is the only way and the most polite way I can put how bad it is out there right now. With us, as always, is the usual gang. Gally's with us. Gally, what's happening?
Not too much. Can't pitch that much. Don't live in California. Don't have 17 feet of water. Can't really complain. Not hot as fuck either.
Oh, it's definitely steamy Houston. I guess this is. I know humidity is just freaking obnoxious, but it's like nasty. Meanwhile, Brian is next to a smoker. I wouldn't even go outside right now for that. And Bickler is with us. Bickler, what is happening?
It's essentially the King of the Hill introduction. Stevie, Texas, to the smoker. I don't know where to go from here.
Yeah, I was gonna say my wife would tell you she's sitting next to a smoker just about all the time because I'm I'm the one next to her. So, but Brian's actually cooking food next to his smoker. There's a big difference. I just
we should probably mention
use
that
drugs.
Those people. Whatever. Sir Z is with us. Sir Z in an evening. Sir Z usually makes his appearances in our morning coffee show. So let's start, as always, with your guys' favorite part, the trivia. Okay. So this week's question, and I did speak to BJ today, by the way. He is on his way back. He can't wait to stir up some question for you guys. So I personally can't wait because I'm running out fast over here. Okay. So our next fixture is against Newcastle. Top goal scorer for Liverpool against Newcastle. This is part of the trivia questions that might have Gerard as the answer category.
Yeah, I can't believe you asked a question where the answer could be Steven Gerrard, and you don't expect two quick Steven Gerrards.
And that's why, we need BJ back as soon as possible, because I had to dig into that book where the possible answer could be Gerrard. We have Mo as a guest. We have Keegan as a guest, because it's reverse psychology. If it could be Gerrard, maybe I'm asking it because it's not, Bickler, what do you have?
Yeah, I'm not going to do what everybody thinks I'm going to do. But anyway,
that can go so many ways. Yeah.
I don't think this is right, but I'm going to say it because it's in my heart, and I love this goal for all time. I'm going to say Luis Suarez.
Okay, good guess. Good guess. Is it correct, though, Gally?
Well, I mean, you did say all time, and Newcastle's been up a long time, so it can be anybody, basically. It's not like just Premier League. So I'm going to go with the all-time leading goal scorer and just go with the numbers and say it's Ian Rush because he scored more Liverpool goals than anyone else.
Another good guess. Sir Z did go with the Gerrard. See, he went with the total reverse psychology like I was baiting you guys. No, the top scorer is the Polish Prince has it right. It is Michael Owen. 14 goals in 11 appearances. Second is Rush, 9 goals in 14 appearances. Third is Gerrard, 8 in 27 appearances. Roger Hunt, 8. And Hodgson at 8. They have 10 and 15 appearances, respectively. Suarez, nowhere near this chart, I am afraid, even though it's a legit guess.
So basically, when Michael Owen rolled up to St. James Park, they felt like it was Luis Suarez showing up at Norwich City.
Pretty much. That's what it sounds like. I mean, that's because that's ridiculous numbers, 14 goals and 11 appearances. It is, it's pretty much a given. Anytime he showed up, he was just going to get a goal. But that is this week's Michael Owen answer question. Maybe we'll do a new category of trivia answer questions with Michael Owen as the answer. Oh, we do not want that zoomed in look.
Don't like that.
There were sudden like 7 chins at the same time on the screen over here, and that's not a good look for anybody. Okay, so Gally's drinking soda again, says Alan. Is this true? Because that's a shocker. Are we out of beer?
No,
Gally's never out of beer. So
the adult beverage right there.
I almost envision like in the corner of the garage, there's like 24 like cases just stacked all the way to the ceiling of just Miller Lights.
No, there's not. It's not actually that way. And
you're like not that high, like.
But I genuinely like drink them when I'm on this with you guys, and don't really drink them that much at home. I drink quite a few. after work with friends when I'm out watching a game. But it's not something I'm not a person who sits and drinks beer at my house consistently all day long. It's just when I'm on this podcast with you fools.
So Bickler, he's basically saying he's not wasting good beer on us, if you understood that right.
The whole thing seems really defensive. I don't know why either. We just asked a question.
It is defensive. We need Kelly to send us pictures of these stacks of the cases in the garage because I have a feeling it is there. Okay, let's get to the game. I figure we'll talk about the game first. Then I'm just going to we can probably walk over with Gally and have Bickler talk about VAR and just have a 15-minute rant. We'll just wrap up the show early and have Bickler just go off on VAR because I know he's ready and brewing for the last couple of days over here. Let's start with the game. Let's start with the lineup. No shockers for the most part, right, Bickler? I mean, it almost feels like if we didn't get Endo or another defensive midfielder, this is the lineup that Klopp was kind of counting on.
Yeah, I mean, we said last week that we thought it was going to be the same lineup. So, I mean, counted as the one time this year we'll nail the lineup. But yeah, I don't think there.
Oh, I think we lost Bickler over here, which is a rare occasion. Bickler, usually the back collapses, the wall and stuff, but we usually rarely have connection issues. So, Gally, let's get to you on that one. How about the lineup? Any shockers there, or would you like to have seen it any different?
No, I mean, I think where Paul was going with that before he kind of bleeped out there was that we called that lineup. That was what we all expected. If anything, we thought maybe one tweak, right? Maybe Jota comes out, someone else goes in. Once you hear Curtis Jones isn't playing, there's not really a fourth option for the midfield. Some people called for Elliott. I was fine with seeing him come from the bench again. Thought he was good again from the bench. So that's 2 performances in a row he can build on. But all in all, that's the best 11 we have. It's not my preferred 11, and maybe we'll talk about that for what Newcastle could look like, depending on what that VAR fallout ends up being with regards to the McAllister thing, but we'll get to that. I thought the lineup, it does itself at this point. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Trent. It's interesting to see if he starts to rotate the front 3 at all.
So we begin the game just in shambles, literally. So before the game, when we were talking the pre-match, I think everybody was kind of predicting, I don't know, because of based off the 9-0 from last year, that this was going to be very easy. And I know Bournemouth is not the best, and obviously we saw that they're not the best in many ways this weekend. But everybody made it sound like it was going to be easy. And my fear was the boys would kind of approach it the same way. And while you might say that for the beginning of the game, I really felt that first minute scare where they had the goal from offside would wake people up and be like, holy shit, never mind, we're in the game over here, let's play. That didn't happen. We got the goal scored. Victor, I guess my concern is, while the optimists, which I'm usually a proud member of, especially post-match, would say, oh yeah, great to see the team respond and stuff. This has been going on way too long, where this team starts games half asleep. Klopp can't deny it, but it is happening. Do you think they were looking past this fixture as well, or this is just another game where we start asleep?
Yeah, I don't know. I wish I knew what the answer was, because we've been seeing this for over a year and a half now. In the majority of games, I feel like it takes us a while to sort of play into it. And I don't know what the answer is, other than the fact that I think this side sometimes thinks it's still a side that can play out of the back, and I don't know that it is right now. I just don't think I think that our entire back line's a step slower, and I just think that I don't know what it's going to take. I mean, if a ball over the top that goes into the back of your net within the first 60 seconds of the game doesn't wake you out of it, I don't know what the answer is. It certainly shouldn't take 15 minutes, because it was a solid 10 to 15 minutes of just panic at the back.
Yeah, I mean, Brian says, do we ever start on the front foot? And, your home season opener, you would think this would be a game to start, on the front foot and really go at Bournemouth and kind of start it off making a statement. And we just came out there really half asleep is the only best way I can describe it, Gally. What do you kind of give it to? Just part of the trend, or looking past Bournemouth a little bit?
I think it's looking past the start of the match no matter what. I hard for me to yell at or call out a bunch of professionals and say on the second match of the year in their first home encounter, they weren't up for the match or were like overlooking the team because they beat them 9-0 last year. I think they wanted to come out and put out a performance. Like usual, it was an early mistake. Luckily, the player ran early and, Trent almost plays him on by tracking him back. It's closer than it actually looked in real time. But I mean, then Allison comes out and just makes an absolute hash of it. And then they score the first one and you chalk that one off. We have 2 more mistakes before they actually score the goal to take the lead, which comes off, to Paul's point. Everyone can get on Trent for the bad touch, and it was a bad touch. But why is Van Dijk playing the ball into him with 3 defenders around him with his back to the goal, his back to the 3 players? He has to know there if he isn't perfect with the ball, there's a huge opportunity for a mistake. And even if he's good with his touch, you still could be playing the player into trouble. And not only does he do it, he fires it at him.
Well, because there's so many people around to get the pass there, zing it in there.
Yeah, it was just such a poor decision. And I know we talk about Virgil, and I thought Virgil got better as the game went on. I thought he was really, really shaky and poor in the first 20 minutes. And I think we've talked about this before. I feel the whole defense goes as Virgil goes. Like when he's shaky and looks like he's like a deer on ice skates, the whole defense looks that way. And I thought Robertson bailed him out twice. He's getting shouldered off the ball by midfielders. Dominic Solanke's pushing him around at one point in the box. Like, it was an alarming first half for me from the defensive side of the ball. It got better once we started going forward and we started to put our foot on the ball. But it shouldn't take lesser opponents playing poorly for us to get going. And that's what it felt like it took on Saturday morning.
And that was the thing. It almost felt like we kind of hustled Bournemouth over there. If they came in after that last year's game of 9-0 to kind of like park back, like be a bit more compact and stuff like that, when we literally were trying to make him score, almost like hustling them, Bickler, saying like, hey, you look at that. You guys have the lead, probably can score 2-3. It felt like Bournemouth played probably a lot more open than they would, which kind of like enabled us to get our game established a lot better. Did Bournemouth get too happy too early, or are we a lot better with opening up defenses now with Mac and Szoboszlai in there?
I think both are true. I think they probably obviously would have sat back a little bit more compact, but I also think this is a different Bournemouth team than we're used to seeing. Like the way they play, like that manager is a Bielsa disciple. They're going to play and it reminded us of like our worst moments versus Leeds, where it's just fucking chaotic and everyone's everywhere. And it's almost like magnet ball, like when you play it when you're really young and the kids are just kind of like that's what Bournemouth kind of does. They swarm. They're not real organized. They're kind of a little bit all over the place. And I think sometimes you play down to that level if you're a better team. And you're not, completely firing on all cylinders. You can get sucked into that, especially if you're down, right? So, I think there were a few things. Obviously, the quality. The reset button on that game is set by Luis Diaz just essentially making his own goal. And so, that definitely helped. But I did think that, we opened this up. I know we'll get to it down the line here when we talk about this game, but I really liked the response from this side when we went down a man. So I think that I tip my hat. Obviously, to the rest of the side and the way we finished this game, barring that opening 20 minutes, I thought the response was really good.
James says, and I actually thought I guess he meant mad. I thought it's going to be a mad season. It said that with more games or something like that. I feel like it's, and we kind of talked about this before, right? And we'll get to it as we get to the second half. But, the way it looked in preseason too, that this team was going to have to outscore everybody. But, my fear is you look at that game and you look at how you started. So I guess that's the question there, Gally. Like, we start like that against Bournemouth and you can kind of get away with it. Clearly, you can't do that against a team like Newcastle and be able to recover. Or do you think this team really has it in them to have that character to kind of recover and come back, or it was made easier, I guess, because this Bournemouth.
Do I want to give Newcastle a lead 1-0 in the first 9 minutes next weekend? No, I don't. Do I think we have a good chance of getting 3 points if that happens? Probably not. Do I think this team, to Paul's point, has the opportunity to figure something out on the fly because of their veteran leadership and the quality they have in the side and the ability to take over a game with possession? I think they can. I think they can do that to just about any team in the Premier League. And we normally get up for the bigger games, right? Those are the ones. I mean, honestly, we started well against Chelsea. That was the best 20 minutes we played in that match, were the first 20 minutes out of the chute. And I think that was because we were up for a big opponent on the road. And I think we'll be up for Newcastle. To me, it's going to have a lot to do with who's available, and we'll talk about that later. But I think when it comes to a team like Newcastle, you have to come and play your best game. I mean, I think this is like one of the 3 or 4 hardest fixtures we'll have to play all year long, home or away. And I think every team in the Premier League is going to find that. And we better be ready for it because they look, pretty up for it so far this year over the first 2 matches.
Yeah, so just says can win the majority of our games with Gakpo and Jota playing in the system. It's not working. Diaz, Gakpo still has to be our front 3. And I do agree to that. And that goes back to what you were saying in terms of who is available and who can play where and stuff like that. So the game keeps going. Szoboszlai, who obviously had probably his best game that we've seen him so far, and just was like, holy cow, this could be something really, really good moving forward in terms of what he can bring. It almost felt like initially he has been trying to almost like fit in, play within the system, not trying to take over, kind of like playing within the system. But it felt like as the game went on, he started to take more and more responsibility on and the ball more on. And obviously he wins the penalty. Mo comes up, misses, then makes it. So I guess the obvious question is, Gally, does Mo stay on these penalty kicks until he actually misses? As we do have a lot of guys on the squad who take penalty kicks regularly for their team, like national team, etc.
Yeah, he's missed 3 out of 5. That's kind of crazy. Like, and he's missed all but one of them. I mean, I know this week he got the rebound and it scored. It was a poor penalty, and he never, to me, looked like he was going to make it. The long run up makes no sense. He goes straight at the ball. I think Szoboszlai's 14 out of 15 in his professional career, and I think McAllister was 9 out of 10 at Brighton. So, I mean, you got 2 guys right there you paid a lot of money for that are shooting at a pretty high percentage. And I know it's hard to tell Mo it's not his job anymore, but I do believe you have to do what's in the betterment of your team. And like that could have been a costly miss if for some reason we don't end up getting the rebound and scoring there. That's like a massive turn and swing in that match. And I just don't think you can chance that. We don't get enough of them.
Yeah, instead of going up 2-1, I mean, you're still staying 1-1, but the momentum swing sometimes can be huge out of those things. Sergi says take him off the pens, Sobo and Mecca step up, like kind of you're saying. But I guess it goes back to what Gally is saying, Bickler. That is a hard thing to do, to tell Mo, hey, not as many goals anymore because you're not going to be taking penalty kicks. Do we wait till actually he does miss again, or does Klopp do something now?
I don't think Klopp is going to make this move until he absolutely has to. And I don't think we're there yet. And I'll tell you why. I mean, first of all, I want to see him get subbed off a few more times this year to know that Klopp's ever going to make a decision that is not going to make Mo happy. I just think I think that has the potential to be explosive. And I don't mean from just like Mo and the manager riffing over it, but I think you have the potential to really significantly damage the confidence of your most important offensive piece. And so I think that Klopp is not going to make that decision until he absolutely has to, and I think it's going to take at least another miss.
Would you do it if you are the man in charge? Because I think part of this answer is because of how Klopp manages, I assume, right? Like before, like how he handles things. If Bickler,
I wouldn't yet. I I still feel like Mo is at the center of everything good that happens, and I think you got to be real careful with that, especially because I think that Mo is probably a little bit sensitive to new blood coming in. Like, and I'm not saying that's right. I mean, that's where this team is. It's going to change over, but I think that you probably got some players in there that are like, I don't know, man. I think that's a big dynamic shift to make. It's the same reason you wouldn't make Soboslai captain with Henderson going out. I just think it's a big dynamic shift.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think I would personally do it until he does miss again, just because of his stature on the team. And I think you're not only affecting his, obviously stats or whatever, but you're affecting his confidence moving on to other things when he's playing everything else. And that's what I would worry about. Gally, you're the manager. What are you doing? He's doing it, by the way, but he's not doing it in person.
Yeah, he's doing it by text. I like it. Yeah,
we know how you break up.
Goes over real well. Yeah, I can imagine how it would be working for you. And I need you to come in on Saturday. Text Friday afternoon. Yeah, exactly. So, all right. So this is my thing. I would have had a conversation or two with him last year. Because last year's misses were he missed the entire, like, literally frame of the net in back-to-back weeks in matches in which we absolutely needed, like, huge penalties. In the year that we don't win the title, no one likes to talk about it. He misses the penalty against Leicester and then misses the open net header off the rebound that Schmeichel saves. And we draw that match and we drop the 2 points that we needed the year before as well. I mean, these aren't like small misses in his Liverpool career. They're absolutely massive. I know he also buried the penalty against Spurs in the Champions League final. So I honestly think as manager of the club, I would have had the conversation with him in the offseason to say, you are absolutely on penalties, but we got to be honest here. If this doesn't start out well, like, we'll have to consider making a look. Because I think then you're setting the tone that it's your job and you keep it by banging him in. But if he does what he does there in that match in that manner, and let's be honest, he had a really, really influential match where his touch let him down all over. I mean, he should have had 3 goals from running play, and he got a goal on a gift off missing a penalty. So it's not like they're still not feeding him and looking to him as the talisman and at all times, all things being his. And he was not slated for not crossing the ball at a time where we needed a goal to make it 3-1 when we were still up 2-1. And he got selfish again from inside 6 yards and took a shot on his own when he could have squared it to Diaz and he was wide open for the goal. And I don't blame him. That's what he does. But I think with that, you can be questioned about your penalties if you kick them right at the keeper.
Yeah, I think it's one of those that you're going to have to take if you want a winger that bangs in goals for fun overall, you kind of have to live with his striker mentality at the same time.
100%.
And it's not a guy that doesn't create. I mean, you saw the goal he created against Chelsea, and I really think I'm really looking forward to that right-hand side. I almost feel like, and we'll talk about this more, but with like Endo coming in and stuff like that, let's kind of put Trent back at the right back and really capitalize on that right hand side with like Szoboszlai, as well as, like with Trent, with the possible overlap and Mo, as opposed to doing the inverted fullback thing we've been doing. But so the second half, I mean, we take the leads and it feels like, okay, one more, the game is over kind of thing. The second half, obviously seeing Endo, we talked about in the pre-match, the ideal scenario was we make it 3-1 or something like that. He comes in the last 20 minutes, wins a couple of balls, passes a couple of balls, and then, he's ready for the Newcastle game kind of a deal. Well, he's kind of like thrust into action before that was planned in totally different circumstances that planned. First off, let's talk about this red card. I mean, I'm assuming we're all three are in agreement that it should not have been a red card. Gally, when I saw it, first of all, I was shocked with the red when I was like, wait, what? But then I was like, okay, in the moment of the game, it could have looked a lot worse. So as we're watching the replay, I'm like, oh, he's probably going to overturn this because it looked like a bang, bang right into the ankle, like a, studs up kind of a tackle. He showed the red. Real time, it looked a lot worse. Once they go to VAR, it's going to be overturned. But Tierney is there saying, double it up, show him another red, and he's off. What do you make of it? And also, what is your prediction on how the appeal will turn out?
All right, so I think it's a bullshit call. I will say this. I've been on this. We've all been on our VAR conversations, and I've gone down the rabbit hole of like shitting on them for letting the video assistant referees re-referee the match. And what I mean by that is like they hide around not making critical calls in real time. I just think the guy got it goddamn wrong. He paused. He took a deep breath. He even thought about it. It's almost like he thought to himself, I saw that. It was a little high. It hit him in the leg. He went down hard. I thought about it. I'm going to give him a red card. There was intent to danger. Like, I think he made a bad call, but I think from a refereeing standpoint, he saw the play on the field. It was right in front of him. He took a moment. He made a decision. He made the wrong decision. We're going to get to VAR, and I'll let Paul do his rant, and Paul, save a little bit because we're going to talk about this on the Premier League show, and that's more about the whole league. So I need you to hold in a few of these great points that you're going to share, but because I agree with most of them. I think it was a bad decision, but I also don't know that the way stupid-ass England wrote up VAR, there's actually room for Tierney to correct the play because it was a mistake in my opinion. But by the way they define clear and obvious, I don't actually know that Paul Tierney can tell him to change his call. And I don't think if the guy went back to the monitor, he would have changed his call. Because I think that's where these refs, they make decisions. Sometimes they stick with them. But I do think there's a very good chance that this appeal gets overturned. But honestly, I don't even care if it does. I just want to make sure that it doesn't get heard until at least next Monday. So he's available for the Newcastle match. Because to me, that's the most important thing.
Yeah, I want to get to that clear and obvious thing. Because personally, I think that is the problem with VAR. And I will sell Bickler on the VAR concept. Yeah. Bickler, for the call, what's your take on it? And what's your take on the appeal? Will it come overturn or they double up on it and say nope, thoughts are up?
I mean, my opinion on the call is that that's like hardly a yellow, let alone a straight red. I don't know, man. I think 50-50 challenge, you see feet up, but like studs are up on both players. Like it's two players going for a ball, and like I said this earlier, like the 50-50 challenge never has a 50-50 point of contact. There's always somebody that's there first, right? And just because you're not there first and you make contact, that doesn't mean it's a straight red. And if you look at it, his foot's turned to the side. He's trying to pass it. He's literally trying to, like, when he comes in, he's literally trying to pass it. His knee is, I mean, the only reason it's high at all is that both players are going for the ball and it's knee high. That's the reason it's high at all. I mean, it's two players attempting to make a play on a ball. And I just think in those situations, you just never give a red unless there's follow through. And like, I didn't even see that. So yeah, I agree with Gally. He just got it wrong. And I think the problem here is, for me, is like, if there's VAR and like maybe in the verbiage, there's not enough for Tierney to basically overturn it, but there is enough to call him to the monitor. And to me, that is your way of saying that, you know, you recommend you probably overturn this call. And I think this is just, I don't really adhere to the conspiracy theory that Tierney didn't do anything because it was Liverpool. I think it was more of, it's a fraternal order. Like, I was just gonna, yeah. This is a brand spanking new ref in terms of like one of his first matches he's ever head refed, and Tierney is not going to put him in a position where he basically has to go and put his hand up and say he got it wrong in a big moment. I think that the VAR ref like never wants to put the head ref in the position, and that's one of my biggest problems with VAR.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it was an easy yellow just because. More than because when he goes in the ball, that's one of those balls, especially in his position. You're going into the ball to either win it and something happens, or you get the guy. Like there is no other outcome out of you going into that ball because you don't want the counter starting. So ball or guy, and like you're saying, Victor, I think he's trying to almost like toe poke that ball to the left to kind of like have it like restart again, recycled again. But I mean, he's going into that ball where if he doesn't get it, the other guy is not going to get it. He's not going to be able to start a counter. So I can understand that. If anything, the yellow is for stopping a counter, like an intentional foul in that sense, I can start with the yellow. I guess the biggest problem that with VAR now, hey, I mean, I hated this thing as an old farts, you know, like total new change. I hated this thing initially. These dogs hate the hell out of it because, for example, they would have normally gotten a snack and freaking like offside and shit like that gets yanked, obviously. But I think the biggest problem is they've kind of converted this thing. It was all about, you know, for the refs all this time, they said, well, it's a tough job because they're making the call right there. We have the luxury of seeing these replays. Well, okay, there you go. Now you have the luxury of seeing the same replays that we are seeing. And there's a guy watching them for you. I don't know how we twisted this, Gally, where it became, I think if they didn't make it where the whole clear and obvious that we're only calling him over to change his decision, because I mean it has come to the point where if they're being called over, decision is being changed. You rarely ever have a ref doubling down on their initial decision. Whereas if we change the verbiage and if we just did it where, yeah, man, this looks weird, you might want to come and take a look at it, because it's still ultimately your call. Going back to what you were saying, you don't want VAR running the show, you want the ref on the show. But it's another dude watching it on the replay and saying, yeah, you might want to take a look at this one. And you make your call. I'm not calling you over here saying you're wrong. Go change that decision. I'm calling you over here to take a second look because it does look totally different on the replay, which is what I thought we freaking wanted.
Yeah, I mean, I love the idea of it. This is where it all comes back to. You have referees doing this for referees. This is why all these leagues say, like, we need independent panels. We need ex-players. Like you almost need players or somebody who could see these things and, like, put real context into it. Like, let's be honest. Like, how is it not? And let's not shit on United, right? United should have drawn the first match of the year. United also should have been ahead against Spurs on the Romero handball that they don't get awarded to him. It's a joke. His arm's this far away. The ball hits it, and they don't give a handball. Like, what world are we in that a year ago Eric Dyer jumps up and a defender moves his arm up by jumping with him? Like, it was the defender's or the offensive player's shoulder brought his arm up. He's got his back to it. Someone else heads it down. It hits his hand. They award a penalty, and Newcastle wins. Like, Spurs lose. It's asinine, the things that they do. Yet then they hide behind clear and obvious for why they couldn't fix McAllister. But we got to spend 11 minutes looking at freaking centimeters and lines on offsides calls. And it doesn't take clear and obvious to take a goal off the board, because every goal's got to be checked. And it, like, nicks an offensive player's hand on the buildup, and they're like, no, it's a handball. It makes no sense. The application of the product of VAR has never made any sense. I thought it was here to make sure that egregious offsides, like Eden Hazard being called onside in that game-winning goal against us at Anfield that year, where he was offsides by like 6 yards. Like, I thought it was for moments like that. It was for, like, Luis Suarez diving against teams and getting penalties awarded. Let's be fair and balanced, right? It was to eradicate the BS in the game. It did none of that. It created more controversy.
But, I mean, like, my way of... because this whole independent thing, I just don't see it happening, because I don't know if every league is going to do it. Unless you make maybe a set people that are doing nothing but VAR, this is your gig kind of thing, but it's still going to be related. I mean, even if they were totally independent initially, eventually they're going to be buddies with the refs anyway, so you're not going to get ahead of it. But why? I feel like if the ref is called over there, Bickler, to take a second look, not because he's being told he's wrong and he's got to change this, doesn't that let the ref off the hook as well? Yeah, I didn't see it the first time. You guys get to see it. I mean, it goes back to what we were all talking about. You know, it's a lot harder live. Well, now you have the luxury of the replays. I looked at the replay. Hey, man, Paul, why don't you come and take a look at this? Because that does look like a foul. That's not really, you know, kicking you in the balls. I'm seeing something 5 times that you could not see. Maybe you were even blocked.
I think the problem is we talk around this, we talk in circles, we look at it at every single angle imaginable, but we don't look at it from the perspective that it was like the only thing that we should be worried about is getting the call right. Like that's the only, like, we shouldn't be worried about like whether it's going to make this ref look bad, or do I have the authority to like, I don't want to make this ref angry, or I don't want to put him in this position in the game and like undermine his authority. Like, we should be worried about getting the call right. Like,
I think you're right. Why don't they, honestly, I know it sounds crazy as shit, right? Why don't they have like 3 guys up in the booth whose job it is to literally officiate the match and literally have a guy that runs the show on the pitch? No, you
just control his arms.
But I'm saying they keep the control on the pitch. But let's be honest, every major decision, every single goal is reviewed up and down the pitch for fouls and buildup, offsides on plays, the last ball in. Every one of these, every goal is reviewed with the goal line technology. Before you know it, all of this stuff is going to be more and more relevant to it. I'm not saying it's the best way to go, but at least then wouldn't those VAR officials not feel like they're only there to like clean up things, but actually be part of the match prep, like of what's going on the pitch? Like almost every major red card offense that we've ever seen that someone's gotten away, whether it was a dirty elbow, something, it's almost like it was just not caught by the official in real time. And then someone didn't pull VAR into it. Like, if you have these people up there, why aren't they actually looking for the major violations the game would be looking to get out? Diving, and even if you go back and figure out ways to penalize these guys for these things, like, to me, they're not utilizing the video assistant referee, because ultimately the referee, it's become muddled, I think is the best way I can put it, to like Paul's point. I don't think anyone knows anymore who is in charge or responsible for what portion of managing a football match, between referees, fourth officials, line judges, who's keeping track of time. Like, they had it this weekend where one of the fourth officials told a coach there'd be 6 added minutes, and then the match official gave 4. Then the match official gave 4. And the guy's like holding the board, and he's like, they can't even get that right. It's just communication, and honestly, it's just bad management, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I'm okay with, the VAR, like letting the guys still ref the game, because I mean, how many times do we feel like, the ref has lost control of the game and stuff like that? So they have a lot of like an important role there, being on the pitch, controlling the temperament and stuff like that, aside from, like making the calls. But I just feel like they have, I should say, set themselves up to fail by making VAR like this boss that tells you fucked up, even though that was not the goal. It was just to make decisions right, like Bickler was saying. Instead of saying like, hey, these TPS reports, why don't they, just like be actually assist them as an assistant referee, right? That's what it was supposed to be, but it's not. It's almost like it almost acts like a supervisor that's correcting mistakes, and nobody likes that. And that's why I feel like we get this, they're covering each other kind of a deal. I just don't get it.
I feel like all these referees need to go like through some sort of HR program where they learn about constructive criticism and stuff, and like how to give it. And it's like, hey, you can tell your coworker that this is how it's supposed to be without pissing them off by saying, hey, like it's just so ridiculous.
With those little claymation characters that are like, so if Sally comes to the office and tells you that she had a bad morning at home, you probably shouldn't tell her. Like, those are the best, right? And you got to connect the dots, and then you get the broken lines because you got it wrong, and you're like, shit, I only get 3 more tries, and they're going to make me take this whole 18-minute video over again. And you know what? I still don't think that Lee Mason could get through that shit.
Yes, like Mr. Tierney. So Mr. Taylor says you suck. How does that make you feel? How do you respond? And that's the thing. I wish they would just correct those little nuances, because it's definitely here to stay. And over time, I have come to kind of like the fact that it's there to fix certain things. But things like this, where they're only shooting themselves in the foot, just makes no sense to me. They're making it a lot more harder, a lot more inaccurate than it should be. But let's go back to the game. One way or the other, Endo gets to come in. What do you make of his performance, Paul? What did you see that you liked? What did you see that you didn't like? Obviously, limited time in weird circumstances.
I mean, I like the fact that within like the first 5 minutes, he intercepted like 3 balls and like just being in the right half space and reading the play. Like I thought he read play extremely well. I thought the one thing that I noticed is that the pace of play definitely seemed above something that he's used to, which makes sense. Dude is literally still unpacking and is just fresh off the Bundesliga. I think he'll be fine, but I think that the pace of play was probably noticeably faster than he's used to. But like I said, I saw a lot of great things in a player that basically doesn't know everybody's name. So
yeah, that's fair. How about you, Galen?
It's very similar to Paul. It was that one time he got caught on the ball, and you could tell like he was just, and you were a little nervous too, because I was like, "Ooh, that could be in a bad spot. And if this goes the other way, this won't be fun." That's when you just shut down social media for like a week. Just take it off, people. And we had a post game show to do, so that wasn't going to work. No, I genuinely, I thought he was good. To Paul's point, he intercepted 2 or 3 balls right away. I thought he took up right spots. I like that he always seemed to have his head up as soon as he got the ball, and he looked like he was ready to keep the ball moving and find a quick pass, and that he wasn't afraid to look to pass the ball forward. And I thought for a guy who was brand new, it would, and I know a couple times he was like, "Hey, Virgil, where are you? Security valve. I'll just kick it back here to the big guy." But there were a few times where I thought he like kept his head up, moved the ball quickly, found the right pass. And I think for a guy playing in his first match at Anfield in a 1-goal game, down a man, playing in the role of the holding defensive midfielder, I thought he did way above Caicedo level, which, well, I think I could have done.
So that's a plus. Yeah,
I think I did better. I think I was above that yesterday.
I mean, I think overall, yeah, you have to kind of be happy with what you saw. I like the fact that he does look to release that ball to a playmaker facing the right way as soon as possible every time he wins the ball, whether that was like, Szoboszlai or whoever. He was kind of like quick to release that ball the moment he won and did those interceptions. So that was definitely nice to see. Yeah, a couple of times caught on the ball, and I felt like he was backpedaling a bit too much at times compared to, obviously that's not being used to the shape and the fact that that shape was totally different because we had 10 people. But at times I felt like he was way too close to the center backs when they had they had possession in our half of the field and stuff like that. But for a first appearance in a circumstance like that, where, I mean, I don't even know if I'm sure he was told that he will be coming in to be ready for action kind of a deal. But obviously nobody could have dreamed, of this freaking scenario for him to come in. And I'm sure he was like, holy shit, what am I going into? But in some ways, Gally, great way to kind of like throw him under the fire over there, especially we don't know how this appeal is going to turn out and stuff like that. And it's one of the toughest places to play. And like you said, and I agree, it's one of the toughest fixtures in the Premier League this season, away at Newcastle. And I assume, I don't know where you're at, that he is starting at defensive midfielder next week.
Yeah, I honestly believe he's starting at the 6 next week, but I believe he was going to start at the 6 next week no matter what. That's my opinion. I could have been totally wrong. I think the Gakpo thing is what our best 11 was, as Klopp kept saying. As of right now, this is the best team I can put out there in the positions I have. But I think he wants Gakpo through the middle or even coming off the bench more. I think he wants his midfield, if possible, to be. So best case, it's McAllister, Szoboszlai, and Endo. And I think that's our starting midfield pretty much going forward.
How about you, Victor? And, having said that, on that note that Gally was finishing, do you expect, I know there's a lot of talk about like Gravenberch maybe coming. I know you guys have in the past talked about like, us looking for a center back ideally. I know Joyce put out something saying today that, we're pretty much set on Endo being defensive midfielder, but we might add another midfielder. And that could be somebody like Gravenberch who can fill in as 6 if needed, kind of like a similar to like McAllister kind of a deal. What do you see happening, Bickler? And I mean, for Newcastle game and in general in the transfer market, we got 10 days left here.
So yeah, I agree with pretty much everything Gally said. If McAllister is able to play, that's the best mid between McAllister, Szoboszlai, and Endo. I think that is your starting midfield. I think if McAllister can't play, I still think we see Gakpo again. I think we see Gakpo, Endo, Szoboszlai in there.
Oh, I agree.
I think regardless of what happens in the transfer market, I think everybody saw that age on this player, and they saw a 30-year-old dude I've never heard from in the Bundesliga in a small club, rotational piece. I don't think this dude is ever going to be a rotational piece. First of all, we don't have rotational pieces at this club, unfortunately. Second of all, I think that this is a player that has everything that Klopp looks for in a player, especially in the midfield. And I think this dude is going to play a big part of this midfield and play a lot of minutes regardless of what happens the rest of the year. In the transfers, whatever happens with injuries, whatever happens with the development of younger players, I think he's going to play a big role.
So is that a title contending midfield then, Bickler?
Yes, I still don't think it's not as deep as I want it to be still from a quality standpoint. I know it's deep from a numbers standpoint. I just think I hate this, but dude, I don't see where Harvey fits in this side. I just don't. And I think you really got to start to look at how do I build this squad out bigger with pieces that I know fit the system that I do, since I'm not going to change the system to fit the players. So I still would like to see more depth in the midfield.
And that mainly goes back to Gally, the fact that, when Bickler talks about numbers, we really do not know what we're going to get out of Bajcetic and Thiago moving forward. Like, you can't count on either one. One of them based on history, the other one coming off a tough injury, and maybe perhaps lack of history for that sense, in terms of, we don't know how he's going to recover and how he's going to stay. I mean, if you knew that those guys are going to, I guess there's no way you're going to know Thiago is going to be reliable. So let's take that out of the equation. But if you knew Bajcetic is going to be reliable and back to what he was last year, does that make you feel comfortable and feel like this is a title contending midfield?
I feel better about it from a depth standpoint. I agree with Paul. I questioned the Elliott where he fits, but then again, I mentioned earlier, I thought he was been one of our brighter players to make 2 good substitute appearances. Not many players have been able to say that so far this season. They actually impact both matches from the bench. So I think my bigger concern is whether or not they can get one more in the door. I think if you could get Gravenberch and bring in literally a competitive piece that could slot in for McAllister or slot in for Szoboszlai and not have that big of a drop off, give you another high ceiling guy who can also play in the 6 and who is the right player if you want to play the inverted Trent with the double pivot, because Gravenberch is good in a double pivot. He's not good if he's a solo 6. So I could see Gravenberch being like kind of a perfect player. Are they a title contending midfield? We finished 1 point out, and if Villa can hold a lead, we win a league 2 years ago with basically Henderson, Milner, Keita, Thiago, and Fab. I mean, that wasn't any kind of crazy great midfield that year. And I think this midfield has every makings to be better than that, in my opinion.
So let's go back to that inverted fullback thing, because I think we also have to talk about Szoboszlai in this game too. I mean, he's unreal. I mean, you look really, really good this game, and you saw some of the things that he can bring. I don't know. I'm in the opinion that in the past, I felt like we had to bring Trent in there because you did not have creativity out of that midfield. When you have Endo, not in terms of a creative piece, I just like how fast he was putting the ball back in action to a player that can create. But if you have Mac and Szoboszlai there, Bickler, do we need Trent to still be inverted, or can we keep him where he's at so he plays right back, takes advantage of that wing to play along Szoboszlai, and also that lets Robertson be Robertson?
Yeah, I think the development the last 2 weeks with the pieces we've acquired and the way that we've set out to play from a tactical standpoint answers the question of whether we're moving Trent to the midfield. And the answer is no, right? And we said this in the offseason. 2 things don't be surprised of week 1. Don't be surprised that Trent's starting at right back, and don't be surprised if Henderson's in the lineup. Well, we know what happened with Henderson, but like the Trent thing bared out. And I think that's the thing is like, we saw something that tactically worked for a few games and like gave us a shot in the arm last year. but it doesn't mean it was going to be the long-term solution. And we went back and forth on this, and I don't think any of us really felt strongly enough to think that Klopp was going to make a tactical switch from the same thing that he's done throughout his entire career. So, I mean, I think that just bore out, and I think Endo is kind of the final nail in that. And I think we can put that conversation to bed. I think there'll be spots throughout the year where we see it be deployed, but I mean, that's pretty normal. We see 3, 4, 5 positions in a game in terms of like tactical formations. Like, it's set the free flow depending on what we're trying to do. But I just don't think we're ever going to see him like have a consistent midfield role or even a consistent inverted role now with the players we have.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, keeping it as a wrinkle in there is nice and dandy, because if they're defending something else, it's something different to throw at an opposing team that's maybe like, parking the bus or whatever. But I think it brings Robertson back to what he should be doing, and he plays a lot better that way. And like I say, I don't think the need we had for it is not there anymore with Mac and Szoboszlai. Gally, where are you at with it?
Yeah, I completely agree. If they hadn't signed Szoboszlai and they had just gotten McAllister on the cheap with the clause, and they literally went out and like shocked all of us by dropping 110 million on Gvardiol, I would have went, all right, I see what you did there. Like, you got a guy to play on the left side, Virgil plays in the middle, and Konate plays on the right, and Trent tucks in without the ball, and you're going to go all pep on everyone, and like, this is your formation. And it would make sense because you would have invested in changing your formation. You would also been moving on from Robertson, right? Like, I could have understood that. Not making changes to the left side of your defense and asking Robertson to do more defending as Virgil gets less of a defender. None of it makes any sense to me whatsoever. And why go out and get yourself, a Fabinho light type of player in Endo? I mean, let's be honest, that's kind of what he is. He's the Bundesliga version of what Fabinho was at Monaco. Yeah. As far as statistically, he's just a center of the pitch, lighthouse type of player, can keep the ball moving, keep his head up, doesn't make mistakes, and everybody loves him. So for me, to Paul's point, signing Endo kind of ends that whole experiment. And I honestly think we probably saw the last of it as Trent once again ran following wingers behind him to the goal as they almost scored.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's just like, focus on your deal kick, and I don't mind it, like I say, throwing as a wrinkle for him to cut in at times during the game to give different looks as we attack. As being employed as like a full-time ordeal, I'm hoping that we go back to, especially like I say, seeing Szoboszlai being effective on that wing makes me think it would be a lot more dangerous if you had Trent coming from that wing as well, instead of hiding Trent in the middle. And then Van Dijk wouldn't have to zing and balls him like 100 miles an hour, take a shot at him that he cannot control, and then yell at the kids for not controlling it. Could they have a better first touch? I guess. But Bickler, any other takeaways from the game real quick before we play our prediction game here?
Let's see. I thought, we've been pretty harsh on Robbo. I thought he had by far his best outing in a long time.
I agree.
I thought that entire left side did well. I think as explosive as Diaz was throughout the game, I thought he did just as much work defensively, which I thought was the huge difference. And I think has to happen. But his defensive work rate is, like we talked about Sadio Mane doing it. I think Diaz is doing it too. And so that was good. Szoboszlai looks like a coming of age player. And I thought the big thing with him for me was that he looks like a player who's starting to understand where he's supposed to be now in that system. We talked about, he's been deployed as more of attacking midfielder traditionally. But like, he's starting to look like he understands what he's supposed to be when he doesn't have the ball and where he's supposed to be. And then everything that happens when he has the ball is just, that's just special, because he's always been special with the ball at his feet. And so I think that's the main difference. Is just, I think a lot of those opportunities and those spaces opened up just based on his starting position, which was like a million times better than it's been.
Yeah, it was just odd. It looked like, it was a guy who was trying to kind of lay low. I don't know if it suddenly clicked for him mid-game and be like, hey, man, I can take this shit over. or somebody said, take the shit over. You're here to play. You're not here to kind of like play within a system, because I think it's the guy we trust with the ball in his feet, and obviously makes everybody else around him better because he's a threat. Gally, any takeaways before we play our prediction game?
Well, no, similar to Paul, Diaz, jumped out at me, especially the first half. He was so vibrant. The goal was beautiful. I love that it seemed that more often, we always talk about him, how he keeps, his boots are on the chalk line the whole time, and he's always out wide. I felt at times, he found himself in the center a lot, like having interchange and swapping with Jota, which I thought was really good, and it helped Diaz. It created the goal. That's why he's in the center of the pitch, to catch that cutback. Also, once again, I thought Jota was really mediocre to poor, but he does what Jota does, and he just pops up in 2 or 3 spots, and he creates the cutback for the first goal. He gets himself an assist, and then he gets on the score sheet, and I still sit there and say to myself, did he do enough to warrant 80 minutes on the pitch or 70 minutes on the pitch, and should he be starting against Newcastle? Again, I question, if you can get McAllister and Endo into that lineup, I want Gakpo up front, and I want Jota maybe giving me those 8 to 10 minutes I need and that cheesy-ass goal for the win. Like, I'm just as happy with that. So, for me, I guess Sir Z has my call right in the chat.
Yeah, I think so, too. Like, drop Jota, push Gakpo up. I think with that midfield, you can afford to do that. And, like I say, out of play, I would rather see Jota coming in as a sub into the game than Nunez personally, in terms of his finishing and stuff like that, because he can pop up, like you're saying, out of nowhere. He's that guy he's a poacher more of a, than like Nunez would be. So
whole nother podcast coming on Nunez someday when we're ready to talk about what's going on there. Let's get there when we got to get there.
Yeah, let's give him some time. I mean, I think he's going to have a lot more opportunities this year with like the Thursday games and stuff like that. Let's see if it's just a matter of confidence. Let's see if he learns. I don't know. I've been very vocal about not being totally sold out on this concept in the mornings, and on is like Mr. Nunez. So we keep going back and forth. But next week, prediction time. Newcastle. What happens? Give me a scoreline there, Vickler.
2-2.
2-2, really? Do we squeak it in, or do we lose it out in the last minutes?
We squeak it in.
We squeak it in. I'm not liking the sound of that. Gally.
He stole my score line right there, because I was going to go with the 2-2 draw. So I'm going to go even crazier. I'm going to say it's 3-3, and the madness just keeps on getting madder. And but I'm not as positive as Paul. I'll say it's 3-2, and unfortunately, they scored the last one.
Somebody's going to be positive around here. So I'll go with the Shelton says 1-1, a lot canceling out. I just feel like...
Okay, so we all think we're going to lose. Okay. Basically.
Well, I'll be the positive one, damn it. I'll go with the 3-2 win. I do expect more of a crazier game than a 1-1. I think both these teams have a lot of firepower to get goals, regardless of how well the defenses play. And I feel like Newcastle's not going to sit back. We don't sit back. As long as we don't play stupid. I'm hoping it goes back to what Gally's saying, and they also see this as a big game and come out to it playing like a big game, as opposed to whatever the hell happens this week, because that was just mind-boggling. And you can be happy about how they turned around and came back and kept their composure and stuff like that. But I'd be more impressed if we didn't put ourselves in that situation to start with. So that's just me. But I do agree. I'm hoping we do that against Newcastle. Get the win, get 3 points, despite you negative bastards. And hopefully, but yeah, I do feel it's a tough fixture. I really think, aside from City, in terms of being away, it's a very tough fixture, because like you can say like a United away or something like that. You can't turn those fans in that stadium against that team.
You can't turn those fans.
You can do that again in Arsenal. You can't really do that in Newcastle. And I think that's like the biggest difference in terms of going away to St. James and like playing those boys there. So let's hope we end next week and we meet over here on Monday after another win, because it's a lot more fun to talk wins than anything else. These boys are going to be recording the Premier League show later on tonight, which should be released in the next day or so. I will be back Wednesday morning with the morning coffee show, and then at night we do the panel. We have an Arsenal and a Tottenham guy on at the same time this week, so I think I'm just going to sit back and let them duke it out. It should be interesting to see, but we'll see you guys then. Have an awesome week, everybody. Take care.